You are listening to Unscripted Moments, a podcast about propaganda. On this episode, we're discussing Life at Disconnect, track number 9 on 2005's Potemkin City Limits. And this is our 5th episode from that album. And I kind of wonder if people are bummed that we're neglecting how to clean everything so much with almost like brazen taunting. And after today, we are 41.66 repeating % done with Potemkin.
I've been thinking a lot about how to clean everything lately. I have tremendous guilt. It's building. We've only done Showdown and Ska Sucks from that episode, and here we are ripping into our 5th Potemkin City Limits episode. You know what? That's just how it goes sometimes. So, whenever we were thinking about doing this episode, I started perusing some old interviews from 2005, and I kind of talked about these a little bit whenever we did. I think it was the Cut into the Earth episode, maybe the Name and Address Withheld episode. This is a pretty dark record for this band. I mean, this and Failed States are really a dark 5-year period, it seems like. Whereas in the past, you would have like, Jesus saves, Gretzky scores, a lot of humor. Like, this is not really a joke-laden record. And reading interviews with the band from this time period really brings that through as well. I found an old interview with Chris in Lollipop magazine, which I think that you have cited this one before, because I found the quote about speculative fiction being like a meditation.
Right.
So this is from that same interview. So the interviewer asks, as Jord points out in the liner notes, entertainment as an exclusive means of change has failed miserably. So why do propaganda keep at it? Why continue to play the music game when it's obviously rotten through and through? Why run G7, buy advertising, put out records when you despise the industry? And Chris replied, he says, we believe music has the power to influence the world around us, and each of us have personal experiences that speak to music's power to transform an individual. Currently, the prevailing trend is toward using that power to encourage consumerism at the expense of ideas, make kids dumber, make punk bands richer. It doesn't have to be this way, and we think it's worth putting a dialogue about music, rebellion, and co-optation back on the agenda. And I really liked Chris's reply, because many of the songs on Potemkin are such rich narratives of human experience, human pain, human suffering, human interconnectedness, and ponderings about what kind of future we are headed towards. And I feel like Life at Disconnect, this particular song, really speaks to that exact vision that Chris has about putting a dialogue about music, rebellion, and co-optation back into the minds of music listeners at a time when, Vans Warped Tour was, cruising around like Snowcore Tour and like all the Taste of Chaos tours. So this is something that I see really ringing true in that vision. And so, I did some digging around for reviews also for Potemkin City Limits era propaganda when Potemkin City Limits came out. And in most reviews that I found, Life at Disconnect is not even mentioned in album reviews. I found one review on a website called Aversion, which called Life at Disconnect, quote, melodic with angular accoutrements. And then it called the track awesome in italics, in print italics. It says awesome. But that's it. There's nary another mention in the reviews of the time period. And I even read reviews in German. I was looking at all the reviews in Germany for Potemkin City Limits as well. And so nothing about Life at Disconnect was coming up. And so I'm wondering how you're feeling about Life at Disconnect and doing this episode, because that was kind of like my diggings that I was doing today.
That's really unfortunate to think, because clearly Todd has so many songs on this record, so many songs that have transformed his style and contributions to the band. I think that would have been commented on more. And maybe because there were, 5 songs where Todd sings on this album. So if another was mentioned, and, obviously you only have so much type space to talk about so many specifically, but that seems unfortunate. I do think it's an overlooked track. I've never seen them play it live. There aren't a ton of videos of them playing it live on YouTube, even though there are some. And I do really like the song, so I'm excited to talk about it.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, we're going to dive in, and we have an awesome guest that I am personally super excited about. So our guest this time around is Jason Hall from the band Western Addiction, and Jason is also a former Fat Records employee. Here's my little history with Jason, and we get into it a little bit in the interview as well. So Jason and I used to correspond back in the day when I worked at a record store called Streetside Records in St. Louis when I was in high school. He would send me promo packages, and I'd put Fat releases that he sent me on like listening end caps for customers, and I would hang up posters. I have vivid memories of Jason sending me packages filled with None More Black posters, Against Me posters for As the Eternal Cowboy, Dillinger 4 Situation as Comedy posters, Oh Calcutta posters. He's a guy that I associate with an era of Fat because he was the one who's sending me all those records. So like if I listen to As the Eternal Cowboy by Against Me today, Jason springs into my mind. I got in touch with Fat and I said, hey, does anybody at Fat like is super obsessed with Propaganda? And Jason's name came up because he is well known as being a super fan at Fat Records of Propaganda. So when I got in touch with him, he wanted to talk about the song Life Disconnect as his track. But we also talked a ton about working at Fat during today's Empire's Tomorrow's Ashes era and Potemkin City Limits era.
Cool.
And also Jason's experiences in Western Addiction, because they have played with Propaganda a bunch of times. So Jason's band Western Addiction is super well known for like their Black Flag influences on their first record Cognizide. But man, I got to tell you, I've been listening to Tremulous and Frail Bray, their second and third records. They have really grown as a band. If you listen to Cognizide and then compare it to their third record, Frail Bray, I see tons more like influences by like the Bronx and like Rye Coalition, and like the Sword even sort of comes through. I've been loving that record. So Western Addiction is completely fantastic, and they've gotten to play a bunch of shows with Propaganda, going all the way back to Propaganda's 2005 tour, the Crimean tour. Another thing that I found out is that I remember is that Todd sang on Western Addiction's Tremulous LP, where he shared vocals on the song Tedium. And Western Addiction were even supposed to play with Propaganda in May of 2020, but you know. So whenever I ordered Frail Bray by Western Addiction from Fat on vinyl, it also came with a rad slip mat that I have on my turntable right now. So I'm totally pumped to have Jason Hall on the show to talk about why Propaganda matters so much to him. So thank you, Jason. Enjoy the interview, and we'll be back in a few. Jason Hall, welcome to Unscripted Moments, a podcast about Propaganda.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
In case anybody out there who's listening doesn't know who you are, can you just give a brief introduction of who you are?
Yes, my name's Jason Hall, and I sing for Western Addiction. And we had a new record that came out in May, and I know this podcast is all about Propaganda, and we've played with them and such, but I also worked for them too, because I worked at the label that they were on and that we're on currently. So I'm glad to talk about it.
Wonderful. Well, Jason, you and I have a little bit of history that you won't remember, but it stands out in my memory. So
I might. Did
so
I do something bad to it?
Oh, no. You've been an amazingly positive presence in my life. Back in like 2003, 4, 5, I was working at a record store in St. Louis called Streetside Records. And you and I corresponded a whole bunch back then because you used to send me promos for my end caps. And I used to email you all the time, and you used to send me the None More Black stuff, Against Me stuff. So you were always super cool about sending me great things to hang up. So 15 years, 16 years later, I just wanted to say thank you for being so freaking cool to me back then. Whenever I would email you from my little record store in the St. Louis suburbs, it was just the best, man. I'm just so grateful.
Awesome. That's good. Usually when people say we've met, it's because I climbed on them at a show or something. And it's always, you climbed on me and it hurt, but it was funny. And that's usually me messing with someone. So that was good. Your story's better.
No, man. And your name has stuck out to me for years. And whenever you even told me while we were emailing when you worked at Fat, like, oh yeah, I have a band and we have a record coming out later this year. And it was just like these memories just stand out to me. And it's so bizarre to me how things come full circle sometimes. And here you are talking to me on my podcast. It's great fun.
It's pretty cool. Actually, when we go out and play sometimes, every once in a while, somebody will come up to me in the crowd and just say, do you remember me? I was a DJ and you serviced me some records. And it's really cool to like meet the people you worked with for a few years. And
yeah,
I don't know, it's kind of a nice experience to see them in person.
I love it. Well, what years were you employed at Fat and what did you do there?
I worked there from 1997, I think, through 2008. So I was there about 11 years. I started in the mailroom
Mm-hmm.
with Floyd, working with Floyd.
Awesome.
Floyd was the most interesting person I'd ever met. He might be the most interesting person I still know. He's a great friend. He's introduced me to all sorts of insane kinds of music, and I'm thankful that I know him. And then first I was an intern, and then I worked in the mailroom. And I at the same time, I was also interning at the big radio station in San Francisco. It's called Live 105, or it used to be called Live 105. It's like a giant commercial station.
Mm-hmm.
And I interned there. I interned at Fat until someone hopefully, hired me. But at Fat, I did mailroom. I did radio promotions, retail promotions. You kind of do a lot of everything. Even though I was like radio and retail, you have input on photo shoots. You might stack a box one day. You do all these different jobs. So, but those were my main responsibilities.
That is so cool. Okay, so tell me a little bit about how Western Addiction formed and what that timeline was like while you were also working at Fat.
Yeah, so we formed in 2002, technically,
Mm-hmm.
and it actually has to do with Fat, because when you work at a record label, you have to go out all the time and you have to see thousands and thousands of bands. And I don't
Mm-hmm.
mean just Fat bands; I mean just seeing bands. And I was just at a show one night for work and watching bands, and I don't even think it was a Fat band, but I was just like, man, I'm so tired of watching all these other people do these things. Maybe I could try this, like
Heck
I
yeah.
can play a little guitar. I'm not great. I didn't even think about singing back then. I didn't even know I could do it, or if I can still do it. But, and so I was just like, I'm sick of watching people. And so the next day I went to work, and I was like, maybe, I'm sure there's some people here that play instruments, of course. And then somebody told me Chad plays drums. He's our drummer. And I just asked him like, hey, you want to try to make some songs someday or play some music? And he was like, yeah, I'm totally down. It was awkward, beyond awkward.
Mm.
What's even more interesting is lately I've been cleaning out a bunch of my old cassette tapes, and I found some of the first recordings we did in Chad's garage. They were hilarious and not very good. So that's how it started, and then we needed someone else to play with us. So Tyson, who his name's Chicken, and that's his nickname. He sings for Dead to Me. He needed to stay busy, so he started playing with us. And it was kind of like, I'll play with you guys until you find somebody, and he just stayed around. And then by that time, I had to sing because no one else. We had some auditions, but no one else would do it. And it just didn't work out. And then Ken, who he also worked at the label, he jumped on for second guitar. He was also in Enemy U at the time, and then that's how it started. And then we made a 7-inch, and I just passed some CDs out at the label. I've told this story before, but I never expected to be signed. I didn't even think about that. I was so dumb, but I just gave it to some people, and then they liked it. And Fat Mike even sent me an email like, hey, I like this. I want to put it out. And it's really hard to tell his tone because he's like, he's purposely vague. And I'm like, so I was just like, Mike just sent me this weird email. It doesn't mean anything. I thought it was a joke. And then he's like, hey, I like it. And then it just went from there. It was pretty lucky.
Awesome. Well, that's great. And then, so the record Cognicide comes out a couple years later, which is the first thing I heard from you guys. But before we go into Cognicide in 2005 in particular, I want to go back a little bit to talk a little bit about Propaganda and you as a fan of this
Yeah,
band. So,
definitely.
how did you first find Propaganda as a music listener and fan of music in general? Tell me about that discovery experience.
It's probably like most people through the fat comps, and it was through Survival of the Fattest. I lived in Northern California at in this town called Paradise. It you might have heard of it
Yeah,
because
it's
it
famous now.
yeah it burned. It's gone.
Man.
It was wild to hear about my hometown, like from the New York Times and NPR. I was like, this is blowing my mind.
Yeah.
Um, and then and I was also in college at the time, and I was a DJ at our college radio station, and we would just order the comps, my brother and I. And my brother was pretty good about he's like, we listened to the comps, and we liked the Propaganda song, and then we liked ordering stuff from AK Press, like all
Hmm.
this sort of subversive. My parents were like, what is all this subversive literature you're
Yeah,
sending to
yeah.
the house? But my brother's pretty well read, and he was good about getting that stuff in our house. um, so that's where I heard it. And I think it was Survival of the Fattest, and I think Nation States is
Mm,
that the one that's on that one?
I
Whatever
believe
the
so,
song
yeah.
is on that one, that was like the direct line into Less Talk More Rock. Um, and then I of course went back to the first record and then forward ever since.
Awesome. Well, I heard through our connection who brought us together that you are a massive super fan of Propaganda, which is so exciting. I love having, musicians and professors and like just cool, curious people on to talk about why this band means so much to them. Do you have any like memories that stand out to you about realizing that this was such a special and unique band? Like, does anything like really jump out at you as far as like big memories?
I mean, there's a million of them, and it's also weird because I was like a fan, then a coworker,
Hmm.
and then a label mate. So I had all these different relationships with them, and they're they it goes beyond music of how, like, of course I like the band and I like everything they do, and but it's also like they're the kind of people I want to be in this world.
Mm.
um, and even the song that we're going to talk about in a moment, it relates in a big way to how I make songs now. Maybe not in style, but definitely in thematic, um, ways. But i- in terms of like the special big moments where I interacted with them, of course, just being a fan on my own. I don't think I ever saw them before I worked at the label. Um, but then when I did work at the label, there was this gap between Let's Talk More Rock and then Today's Empires.
Hmm.
And I remember when that single came in, and then everybody gathered in this big fat, used to have this one big main office that we all sat in together, and we all listened to it together. And it was like, I mean, we usually are excited when new stuff came in, but this was a time where everyone stopped what they were doing and they all came out, and they were and then we listened to the single together, and that was really exciting, because it was like, oh, they're back and we get to do this thing. And there's some bands, like, just like with any job, some things you're just going through the motions, and it's not because they're a bad band, it just might not um, resonate with you. But for Propaganda, it was like oh, I want to do good. I want to do good for these people because they're doing good in the world. And the one interesting thing about them is that they enlighten you, but they never make you feel judged or you're not doing what you're supposed to do. It's almost like this radical education without judgment. And I've always been a person who really likes lyrics, and the weirder the better. And when I
Mm.
heard Less Talk More Rock, it kind of blew my mind. um, uh, is it blew my mind because there was topics that within there that I was like, oh my gosh, did like in that one song where he's like, I tried to have sex with a friend of mine.
Yeah.
It just like blew my mind as a young person. Where I was like, what is this?
I know, man.
And I grew up in a really small town, and not a lot of ideas got up there. And so I was like, I wasn't ready for some of these themes, but because I was just like too naive of the world. And if you look back to what they were talking about, man, they were anti-racist, anti-fascist, all these things just years ago. No one had to tell them that this is what they're supposed to do. It was just like, that's what they are. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh my
Sorry,
God.
that
Yes.
was a long answer.
Absolutely. No, it's absolutely that way. And Keith and I find ourselves going down these rabbit holes, these like Easter eggs of single words in a song. Gustafson, you know what I mean? Like, come on. It's absolutely mind blowing what they're able to do to send you on this intellectual path of just intrinsic curiosity, and you just explore it because you feel like there's nothing else to do in the moment. But I have to learn about the Gustafson Lake standoff. Come on.
Yeah, it's great. And I guess the last major moment is, of course, when we got to play with them. We did a short West Coast tour, and that was great. It's you. Then I get to know them as people, and then we play shows together, and it's fun, and we're interested in the same things. And I mean, they don't like hang out or party or anything, or not that much, but I think people are intimidated to meet them as well, because it's heavy duty, but it couldn't be further from the truth. I mean, now Chris and I talk about our kids,
Yeah.
or Todd and I, we talk about, art or something. But that was a major moment. Also, when Todd sang on our last record, that was a pretty good, that was a pretty major moment too, as well. And there's not many bands. There's like a handful of bands where I mention it to all the guys in Western Addiction, and they're like, yes. And Propagandy's one of them, where they're like, I was like, what if we got Todd to sing?
Yeah.
And the dudes were like, yes, hook it up. And
well, say the name of the song really quick so that everybody out there who's listening who hasn't heard Frail Break can go and find it.
Yeah, it's called Tadium, and it's on our last record, and Todd sings a whole entire verse.
They will kill you and then they'll eat you.
There was this, they did this funny post too on Twitter where Todd and Chris kind of talked to each other, I think on Twitter, and then Todd wrote something like sang on the new Western Addiction record, and Chris was like, what the hell? And then he wrote something like, sorry, Chrissy, always the bridesmaid. It was so funny. And it wasn't like a slight to Chris or anything. It's just like, there's something about Todd's like raw power, and we can talk about that later.
For sure.
That we're like, whoa, this would be kind of cool, and it might fit this song pretty well, because the song is like, it's patterned after the Four Horsemen by Metallica.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like, ooh, his voice would be so fantastic for this. So it just went from there.
Man, I love it. Okay. Well, Jason, let's get into some specifics here. When I reached out to you to come onto this show, you mentioned you wanted to talk about the song Life at Disconnect from Potemkin City Limits. Now, as a former employee at FAT, I am curious about your time at the label regarding this particular 2005 era. So your record Cognizide came out 2 weeks after Potemkin City Limits in 2005. Like, this was like within a couple weeks. So it was like October is Potemkin, November is Cognizide.
Yeah.
What are some of your standout memories of being there as a member of a FAT band while also a staff member when Potemkin was come out? Because this is a, you know the drama of this record. But like, tell me a little bit about that time, about 2005.
I remember there was a little bit of I mean, I don't know if anybody was unhappy, but I think Lagwagon came out on the same day. And when you have big records that come out on the same day, it splits the spotlight. And so I remember there being a little bit of, People were a little upset about that. I know the band probably wasn't loving it, and then also sometimes the staff is like, why can't we just spread these out? But Mike was pretty good about keeping a cadence to the releases, and so if one doubled up, it just did. And this record caused a lot of problems because there's a couple songs on there that are quite poignant, and we can talk about that. And then for us, it was fine. We were a super small band back then, and so I mean, it didn't impact us at all. If anything, we got listened to more because there were good bands around us. I remember when the record did come out, our record, we got offered to go to Europe with Lagwagon, and we couldn't go because it's like 4 members of the staff, and they're like, you can't go because we just had these 2 huge records, and then that, I don't know, that band called Randy?
Yeah, for sure.
Randy had a release coming out, and then so Aaron was like, you guys can't go, and she was right. It'd be unfair because it was too small, and we were too small, and frankly, it was the right choice because we were not ready to go. In maturity, and so that's what I remember about that time. And this record, Potemkin City Limits, I don't know if it's everyone's favorite record, and because there's so many other great ones to pick, but I really like this one in feel, and we can talk about that when we talk about the song for sure.
Excellent. Well, was this like the kind of moment when that record came out to where like, people are walking to the office and like you're working on promos for it and you just like keep your head down and work and like just shut up about it?
Nah, I mean, I'm sure you're talking about Rock for Sustainable Capitalism.
Yeah, well, and I talked to Brendan Kelly about that as well, and he was very outspoken about, his time on the label with the Lawrence Arms and observing, what was going on. And so he and I talked about Rock for Sustainable Capitalism, which I hope you'll get to hear because it was a great chat. But, it was just such a powerful moment that just resonated throughout the entire scene. Like even my friends in our little goofy scene in St. Louis, like we were like, what the heck is going on here?
Yeah, they're real punks. There's no one that won't be they're not afraid to say anything or do anything. And Mike messes with people all the time.
Yep.
And so I think this just one hurt a little more because we all really respect Propaganda so much. And then that song is just damning,
Yeah, it's wild.
And it is wild. And it's also like looking back as an adult on politics, I think people think that when you vote for president, you're somehow married to that person. It's like, that is not what you're making is a strategic choice. And the strategic choice at that moment might be to, shoot what's in front of you, because it's like, it's the worst of these 2 situations. I'm going to take the least worst thing. And I'm not saying that as like people are like, there's no good candidates, because, there are good candidates. But I think that because Mike was associated with John Kerry, and then those guys did not like it. There's all sorts of hypocrisy in music and with bands. Bands are talking about smashing the state, and then they get in their Ford van and they fill it up with their Chevron gas and they go, to the Warped Tour. It's like, what are you going to do? What are you going to do sometimes, And so you just have to live with some contradictions. But this one was especially like, this one hurt, I think, for some people.
Yeah.
We were laughing kind of like this. Like our minds were blown. And the song's so good too, that it's like, it's hard because I see Mike dish it out to people all the time. And then this one kind of got him, I think.
Yeah, well, and I was thinking about that song in particular, and like Fat Mike's Cokie the Clown record. He was on a podcast with Benny from the Gaslight Anthem recently, and he was saying, oh my God, he was like, yeah, I hurt people and I lost friendships. And I'm like, oh wow, that's a really interesting statement. I wonder if there's any connection there, which we talked about that in the Rock for Sustainable Capitalism episode as well. But it's just a really interesting comparison. Like, oh, I hurt people with my music, and I wonder if I can make it right. And it seems like the relationship.
I was quite surprised to hear that too.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so this is not the Rock for Sustainable Capitalism episode.
Right.
Let's go on to this Todd track, Life at Disconnect from Potemkin City Limits. Why did you choose this song from that gigantic list that I sent you?
Well, so I do like the Potemkin record in general because it's well, first of all, I should say that it's hard for some bands to go through different eras, and so they had their last era with John Samson, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I love him, and I loved him in the band. And when I heard he was out of the band, I was like, no, what are they doing? You know,
Oh, man.
like John is the closest thing. He's such a nice man, and he's the closest thing. This is going to sound ridiculous, but to like a modern day poet. Like if your job was a poet,
You're
which
right.
is not a job, you know, but John can be a poet. And if you just listen to his lyrics and how simple yet they stick in your mind, and that's what a poet does, you know, if that was a job. And then, but then Todd's era is just it's just like the most powerful. It's just raw power, you know.
Yeah.
And his stage moves are so weird but so interesting, and he's so into it. I don't know. There's just like this radical truth to them. That's what I find in their music. It's like it's the absolute truth in doing something. And 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 so I picked Life at Disconnect because it's a topic within Western addiction, and it's a topic in songwriting, and it's actually like kind of a topic in my life where I'm always feeling disconnected, or I feel like I'm seeing things other people are not seeing. And I don't mean that from like I don't know if you've ever seen me or whatever, but I don't look like a anti-flag punk or anything. I just look like a normal, boring dude.
Yeah.
Like I don't, but the way my mind works is I'm seeing things in weird, intense ways, like they kind of do in the cracks in their music, where they're seeing these things about like, so I think capitalism is going to destroy our earth, but people aren't really seeing that, and they want COVID to be done so they can get back to normal. I'm like, well, what's going to be back to normal? Like just crushing the earth faster,
Mm-hmm.
or like when you're watching a sporting event and you see jets fly over it, you know. And I have family members that are in the military and friends that were in the military, but those jets, those are like displays of power on how to kill people. And or like we were watching this football game and my daughter saw a cheerleader and she's like, what is that?
Mm.
And I'm like, oh, this is like a dancing lady that cheers the men on in like tight shorts. But seeing that, I'm like, that is weird to me. It's and seeing it through her eyes, where she's like, why is she dancing for those guys? And I'm like, you know what? I don't know why.
Yeah.
And so I'm just seeing these things in very different ways, and I feel like they see the world in very different ways, and it's stressful. Like it makes for a life where you're constantly like fatigued.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess I feel some connection with them in that way.
Well, I think that you and I have that in common as well. You know, as a dad of a 7-year-old girl myself, it's the same kind of thing. And there are certain things that I just like. I don't want her to know about the world yet because she believes in magic and
Yeah.
fairy gardens, and I don't want her to be completely crushed quite yet. Like I feel like I am. You know what I mean?
I agree with that stuff, and I don't expose my daughter to really heavy stuff, but because I'm like, you have your whole life to feel all this this like terrible stuff. And I guess I feel like I think I feel the empathy they feel.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of funny. Have you ever I've mentioned this before, but sometimes I'll watch old episodes of, do you know who Donahue is?
Yeah, the talk
You know,
show.
yeah, like Donahue or Geraldo or Jerry Springer, any of those
Oh,
guys.
heck yeah.
So there's always episodes where they have punks on, right?
Yep.
Where it's like, we're interviewing the wild punk rockers, you know, and to hear what they're going to say about this world and how they're destroying society. And if you watch the Punk Donahue one, everything they're saying is like the most empathetic, almost Christian like where it's like, I don't want to judge people, I want to help people, everyone's welcome. You know, they're worried about nuclear war, but it's like the most empathetic, caring. It's almost like all the right messages coming from the craziest looking people, but you can see. I mean, Donahue's pretty chill, but but the people in the crowd are like, you guys are, you're a menace to society. I'm like, I don't think so.
Yeah.
They're like, they're trying. You see black people up there, you see trans people, and they're all trying to get together. And I feel that spirit in Propaganda's music too, where it's like this radical caring in an aggressive way.
Yeah. Well, here's another thing. So I know that you really admire Todd's work as well. And the imagery that Todd paints with his lyrics it helps me see situations in different ways. Like Todd constantly is like writing about things like refugees or like the depression of a middle-aged father and things like that. Do you have any like favorite lyrics from Life at Disconnect that like really resonate with you, especially since you're a writer yourself and you write your own songs?
Yeah, I pulled a couple out actually, and you're right. They do talk about immigration and refugees and police brutality, and those are all. What's strange though is all these topics kind of hold up.
Mm-hmm.
Western Addiction has the same thing where I write all these songs, and people are like, "Whoa, did you write this about Trump and this and politics?" I'm like, "Nope, not at all." But there's like these universal themes,
Yeah.
that just kind of they keep coming up, and I kind of route the universal themes through different characters and different scenarios. I mean, we have like, let's see, I wrote down the songs that I think. Okay, first I'll tell you the lyric, and then I'll tell you the Western Addiction songs that are all pumped with these themes.
Go for it.
From Life at Disconnect. The lyric where he says, I know how you feel if your life's a disconnect, in case you're wondering what the, I don't know if you can curse here, what the F
You
song
can
would
if you
be.
want to.
Okay. And if it all makes sense, if your life's at disconnect, like if you don't understand how things are, or if you do understand how things are, then you're the furthest gone, which kind of made me feel better, where sometimes I feel like I'm an alien on this earth, and I'm like, okay, spaceship, come get me. I don't want to. I can't be here because this does not make sense to me.
Yep.
When I see all the people downtown without their masks on, I'm like, are you crazy? We could just like all wear our masks for 40 days and be done with this whole damn thing.
Yeah.
Like, when they're talking about the tools to fix the world, they're like, how are we going to do it? I'm like, what? We have all the tools. We just do it.
Yep.
And so, it's like, you don't need magic and you don't need money. It's like, oh man, just shut cars down, stop drilling for oil. Everyone has to go vegetarian for 2 years. Like, we have all the stuff.
Yeah.
And so this line in particular made me feel good. Like, if the world is at disconnect with you, then you are seeing something that others are not seeing. And I'm not saying I'm an elevated or a smart person, because I don't think I am. But there's something firing in my mind where I'm not comfortable, because I'm seeing these things that are so obvious to me.
Well, and you're still trying to problem solve. You're still trying to make the world better, instead of being like, well, we're as good as we're ever going to be.
Yeah. It's just like, how can this be normal for you? Or what is total common sense to me? Like when I hear Trump talking on TV, and I know he's like a bad example, but it's like, or if you watch the RNC, you heard Ivanka say he was like introducing her father and saying he's the voice of common sense. I was like, what are you talking about? Like that is not even close to being true. And I'm not a Democrat, and I'm definitely not a Republican. I'm, of course, totally progressive, but I'm not going to be in either of those groups because I want to make my own decisions. But I, of course, pick a line with all liberal things. But I'm just like, none of this stuff makes sense to me. Where Trump's talking about drilling in in Antarctica, or I'm like, what, dude? No way. Like, that seems like common sense, but for a lot of people, it's not common sense.
Man, I know. And I bet that when Victory Lap came out and Chris says, God, are you there? Can you confirm I'm on the right goddamn planet? I bet you were like flipping out, weren't you?
Yeah, because it is. It's because it's kind of like mind blowing, and I don't expect everybody to be, you know, I don't expect everyone to be a vegetarian or do the right things all the time. Would just expect them to see things,
Yeah.
and they're not seeing the things where. Uh, so during COVID, all these corporations are getting, you know, getting more and more money. Where it's like Jeff Bezos is worth 200 million, and Apple is, making billions and billions and more. And then they're talking about who's going to be the first trillionaire. I was like, who cares? Who cares about any of that? Are you guys like, where are they going to spend that money? There's not going to be a spot. None of that really matters. It's hard though to be in life because you're always taught to be like, make more money, get a better job. But man, I have a good life. I have a small home. I have a nice family. I don't need anything. I have 2 guitars. Like, I don't need anything. I just need food money and my family.
I know. Isn't that crazy to think about how simple life can truly be and how we were just raised to just be complete greedy freakazoids? Isn't that
Yeah.
unbelievable? Doesn't that just blow your mind? Like the way that we were just raised to think
Yeah,
that
well, it
wealth is great.
aligns wealth with success. And
Hmm.
that is the wrong. I feel like it's coming around a little bit, but you're constantly feeling like, oh, I'm not a success because I'm not a millionaire. But it's like, if you have food money for the night, you are a success.
Hmm.
Do you know what I mean? It, and I just, like, I don't need that much. And actually COVID has been a glaring example. Like, I don't need to buy anything. I don't need clothes. I haven't worn socks for like 7 months. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Which is psycho. I put some socks on the other day. I'm like, what is this?
Yeah, I only wear socks because I'm a runner and I have to. But
Yeah.
like I'm in like jean shorts and like a Vincent Van Gogh skull hat like every day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I have
Yeah.
like regressed so much. Like 5 years ago, I was in a tie every day, like in a high school classroom, and now I'm like in jorts, like
Yeah.
with like Javiana's flip flops, like, and I'm just like totally regressed so hardcore.
But you don't need it. And you're a teacher too, so you're seeing all these kids with their ideas about what's important, or um, so it's really hard to deprogram children. Actually, one of my the town I live in is pretty well off. It's a nice town, and I just happened to live here because my wife's lived here since she was 18, when she moved here. But one time, one of my daughters says, "Where's our upstairs?"
Mm.
And it was like, "Oh, we don't have an upstairs, buddy." And they're like, "Well, why?" Or, or like when it's vacation time, her friends, get on jets and go around the world. But she's like, "Where are we going?" I'm like, "Well, we're gonna go on a bike ride, dude."
Yeah.
But but so it's hard to divorce yourself from feeling insecure about not having money or radical wealth with being successful, because those things are unrelated.
Isn't it amazing what, like, just talking about a song by Propaganda, like, gets going in your mind?
Yeah. Oh, I love it. I mean, my favorite lyricists have made me think, whether it's like the first time I heard Bad Religion, I was like, what is this? What are these words?
Hmm.
These aren't, song words. Or even Morrissey, like Morrissey just recently had some single about, um, it's off his latest, like, and I know he's controversial, recently, but just the way he wraps words together and the things he's talking about, I'm like, who are these people? Like,
I know.
it's almost, since I'm not a very good guitar player, I really think about song and I think about words and how those go together. And it blows my mind when someone is just a ripping guitarist and then their lyrics are like, okay, here it comes, just red hot baby tonight, all right. Like that, dude, you've dedicated your whole life to shredding, and that is what you strung together.
Yeah. Oh my
Like,
God.
do you know what I mean? It's like almost insulting to music and to people.
Yeah. Oh my God. It's awesome. Well, okay. So you just mentioned that you do play. Tell me about your impressions of the musical performance of this song. Like, what do you like about it? Like guitar, bass, drums, like vocal delivery, reflections, anything about the actual performance? What stands out?
I love Todd's delivery. He's like one of the most powerful singers. Him, Chuck Reagan, and Ice Cube have the best deliveries.
Awesome.
Which, if you really think about the power of their how they can scream, or like somebody like Frank Black from the Pixies, just like the sheer power of their voice. So I like that. I liked when John Sampson was in the band, but I also like when Todd came in, and the bass playing and the musicianship almost gets to prog, but not. It doesn't cross the line into annoying. Do you know what I mean by that?
Yeah, for sure.
Where it's like his bass lines are almost proggy, but they're complementary, and they're complementing the song, and they're not getting above the song. And I really like that part of it too. So there's like his bass lines provide counter melodies. And I like his voice. I like when it cracks. Even when Chris sings on Rock for Sustainable Capitalism, when he does that crazy scream, the first time I heard it, I was like, whoa, that was not in tune, or that's not a note that you hit. And I was like, this is so awesome. Like, that felt right in my mind. And it kind of gave me the like, oh, I can scream however I want. It does not have to be in key. Or, I mean, ideally, sometimes you'd like to be in key. I would like to be in key, but
yeah.
And so in terms of performance, I like that. So I do like some of the complexity. And when I was listening to it today, I was like, damn, Propaganda should tour with Baroness.
You're so right. They should.
Especially for this record. I was like, this is Baroness, but with a little edge and less prog.
Yeah, a little faster too. And like I feel like, Gina and Sulin and Todd and John Beasley, like I feel like that would just be like the greatest like friendship of people. You know what I mean? Like I could just see it being like a traveling, like almost like a circus.
Yeah, it would be so good. And so there's just something about this song that felt like that to me. And overall, in terms of performance, and maybe just Propaganda in general, I like how cerebral but just blunt force they are too. Where it's like the best of everything I like about music. Interesting lyrics, it's like crazy, like shredding, and then just blunt force hardcore.
Yeah.
All in one band.
Man, I love it. Well, and since you brought up Chuck Reagan, I have to name drop my favorite Chuck Reagan performance of all time, which is on probably one of their most overlooked records. It's the record called Exister from 2012. My favorite Chuck Reagan song ever is the closing track on Exister called Paid in Full. I think that is the gnarliest Chuck Reagan performance of all time.
Yeah.
And I'll die on that hill.
If you watch him, it's like if you were standing in front of him, your hair might blow back a little bit.
Yeah.
I met him one time in San Francisco at Slim's, and I was like, dude, you have the best delivery, you and Ice Cube. And he started laughing. I was like, I don't know. It's there's something. I try pretty hard to sing pretty loud, and people have said I have okay resonance. And I didn't even know I could sing, and I can't really sing, but I can yell. And I didn't know this about myself until we did a couple sound checks, and people were like, whoa, like spill their drinks kind of. And I was like, oh, I didn't. And so I kind of look up to those guys as people that they got a lot of wind, and I want that.
Awesome, man. Well, I was listening to Frail Bray and Cognicide today on my run, and I kept thinking, this is literally what I was thinking today. So I mean this as a compliment as well. I was like, wow, if Todd couldn't sing at a show and Jason was in the crowd, Jason could sing Todd's songs and rock it pretty hard.
I would do it. I would love it.
I feel like you could do it. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm curious about Todd's influence on you with your vocal work with Western Addiction. Does Todd like stand out to you as like somebody that you kind of strive for?
Yeah, he's somebody I admire. When we toured with them, I remember this one night we played at this tiny bar in San Luis Obispo. It's called Slow Brew. I don't know, it held probably like 300 to 500 people, and it was a memorable night. First, it was memorable because somebody said something to Ken on stage, and like they said, what does the Asian guy think? And Chicken just attacked him. He's like, what the hell do you say? Like Chicken would really go at people. And thinking back on it, that's anti-racist and that's the way you need to be now. And Chicken just let this dude have it. So I was like, this is so awesome. So like, you know, really standing up for Ken. Ken's Japanese. And I kind of forget like how difficult it is. I mean, it's wrong for me to forget, but when we go out, people say weird stuff to Ken. And I was like, what world is this? What world are we out where a Japanese man can't go around, you know, and still not get a little bit of like it's strange. You would think it would not happen, but it does. And I kind of watch Ken. I'm like, that stinks for Ken. So anyways, that happened and Chicken let that guy have it. And it was awesome because Chicken let a lot of people have it on stage and it was kind of funny. And then Todd sang the F the Border song, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes I have like some theories about what makes songs good and what makes for, you know, they give you like this physical response. And when he sang that song, I cried a little bit. I was like, how can one man push air that hard? And it was just like, I'm like, man, I'm going to try to sing as hard as Todd. And I also heard stories about him where he's like, blew out his voice day one in the studio because he was just like going so hard. And you can't do that, you know, like you'll really mess your voice up and you'll be done and you're of no use to anyone. But I was like, man, I respect this kind of.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, you know, something I also find similar between Western Addiction and Propaganda is I'm always looking to find nuggets of hope within dark themed songs.
I agree.
And I'm wondering if Propaganda gives you hope at all. Like, what do they bring out in you that you like are like striving for as like a hopeful person?
It totally does. It's okay to know these things. They're a band because they do have hope. I mean, even though Potemkin is a very depressing record and there's some heavy stuff on there, even the song I chose, it's like there's brutal stuff on there. They are showing you a blueprint for how to live and how to be. So it does have hope. And when we made our previous record, Tremulous, it was pretty like people are like, whoa, this is a bummer. And I'm like, yes. But so when we made Frail Bray, I was like, I'm going to make this one hopeful. It's still going to be about heavy things that are tough. And there's some of these themes that they never go away. And whether it could be like the opening song, The Leopard and the Juniper, that is like a straight up like an Animal Farm, like allegory type song about the haves and the have-nots.
That is awesome.
But it's also like, there's something about Propaganda who I respect, that they're peaceful but aggressive, where it's like, I don't believe in fighting, but I'm not going to sit around and let you behave the way you are without saying something. And I like that they're not violent, but they're tough. They could be if they wanted to, but it's never really part of it. It's just like aggressively telling you, or I guess being so confident in what they know is right that it gives you, I feel okay saying what I feel about the world because I'm like, I know this is the right way because they know it's the right way.
I love that.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah, sorry.
Well, Jason, I'm just super grateful for your participation on this project. Like I see this show as a sort of documentary of sorts. And so like whenever I have people on here who have like toured with Propaganda or worked with Propaganda, I almost see it as like, you know, a documentary situation regarding this amazing band's history and people who have observed them from afar and up close for many years. So you've done both. And it's just so cool to hear your stories with regards to this band.
Thanks so much. Yeah, it's like they give you, I know my problems aren't as, you know, intense as a refugee or someone that's, suspect of police brutality or something, but it's like they give you hope on all levels, where it's like day-to-day things, they could make my life better, or if there's big issues in the world, they can make your life better that way too. And it's like in the most non-judgmental way. And I'm like, that is the perfect combination where you're not telling people, you know, straighten up, do it this way. You're inspiring them, and the mediums, you know, thrash and rock and roll, which is nice, but for me, but I love that it's like non-judgmental motivation to being a better person.
I love it. Well, Jason, do you have any projects that you would like to encourage listeners to check out of things that you've done or things that inspire you or anything?
Um, hmm.
Besides, Frail Bray, obviously, in Western Addiction, which is out this year on Fat. So that's pretty cool, too, to talk about.
That was cool. It is weird to talk. We put out a record in the worst time ever. It's just
yeah.
like, it must be we tried to get it pulled back, but it was just too late by the time it was in the system. I am proud of the record, but it does feel shallow talking about it sometime. But I mean, it has gotten, nice reception, and I must have done 50 to 75 interviews. I love doing interviews, and that part has been pretty cool. And so I can talk about the things and the issues that it conveys. So that part's been nice. I am proud of it. We have a new video coming out next week too, and it's for that song called Lorette. And we've never had kind of like a straight ahead, like hardcore video. And our bassist, Mitch, he's awesome. In the downtime, he learned how to make videos, and he made us a video. And it's like sometimes I think the expressions are too grandiose. He's like, I made us a hardcore video. I'm like, what? And it's pretty tight. Like, I don't know if this is kind of poignant, actually. Do you like Power Trip?
Oh yeah, heck yeah, Riley Gale, man.
Yeah, so sad about him. That was such a bummer to hear about him passing. Like, I don't know him, but I felt physically depressed for like 2 days. I'm like,
absolutely,
no. So when Executioner's Tax came out and the video for that came out, I was like, I've seen this video 100 times before, like, tanks and atomic bombs, but it was so tight. And it reminded me of Headbangers Ball as a kid. I was like, this rips. It's like nothing new, but it doesn't matter. It's like a modern version of what I saw as a kid on Headbangers Ball. And so Mitch kind of made us a cool hardcore video like that. And it's kind of tight. I like it.
Man, that's freaking sweet. Well, and I was just thinking about Riley. I've been thinking about Riley a ton lately too. And there's a video that Hate56 made from one of their shows a few years back. And it's one of their like long instrumental, slow, like super heavy openers that they do. And then Riley, like 30 seconds in, just goes, Rah! Just like in this opening scream. And I was like, wow, that scream is 2020. Like, filmed years ago, but that scream is this year.
It's such a shame too, because I like what he represents. You can obviously tell he was a loved person.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, people loved him. Like, so many bands commented on it. But what I liked about what they did was, like, they're an aggressive thrash band from Texas, and they're talking about human rights and gay rights and rights for Black people. And I'm like, man, how modern is this? Like a metal band that's like aggressively progressive, but in this package, I was like, let this be the new world of metal. And I'm not saying other bands aren't, and metal's better. I listen to tons of metal, and I know there's some problems, with some Black metal bands and, some kind of racial things. But it's like, if this is the new face of metal, like these young, dudes in their 30s who are aggressively preaching what Propaganda does, like, what a better message.
I completely agree. And that's just amazing. And just a heads up on something, a listener of this podcast wrote to me recently and said that they are developing a leftist Black metal band podcast to highlight leftist and like progressive bands who play Black metal and other aggressive music, but are aligned with progressive values. Because that's my biggest problem with metal is I never know who's a jerk and who isn't,
Yeah. And Black metal, I can't understand anything they're saying, and I love it. And I love Black metal so much. And I feel it even changing too when I'm hearing about people talking. I know the whole deal is, about death and all that stuff. And, the void, but I feel it changing. I just feel like this modernization of where humans have value. And although it is about dark and depressing things, I don't know. It seems like people are like seeing the right way to be. And that's hopeful.
I love it. Well, Jason, this has been an absolute pleasure. We have covered so much ground. Fat Wreck history, your history with Propagandy, this great song, Life at Disconnect from Potemkin City Limits, touring with Propagandy, and then a little bit of rest in peace to Riley Gale out there. So, Jason, I am just so grateful
Yeah,
for your
so sad.
participation. And I'm
Well,
just super
thank you.
grateful that you were here.
Yeah, no, thanks for doing this podcast. I really like it. It's funny too, is like, can a whole podcast be about one band? And I was looking through the people, I'm like, it sure the hell can.
Yeah.
There's so many things to talk about. And there's so, I mean, our music doesn't sound like Propagandies, but they are like, I want to be like them as people, and they're great about putting you, if you listen to their music, it's about putting yourself in other people's shoes, and that's all you have to do to know how someone's it feels. And I know that sounds so lame, like it's like a, something you learned as a child, but it's so true. Once you get to know people, and once you get to be around people and put yourself in their shoes, there's no denying the human spirit. And you, like, the most hardened person couldn't turn their back on someone because they know how you feel, and that is what they teach me as a band.
Amazing. Well, Jason, thank you so much. This has been just an absolute delight.
Nah, this is awesome. I'm down. I'm gonna listen to it.
For the end, the spectacle, or some kind of catastrophe to bring us back to earth. Start our ever nodding heads to introduce us once again through the one incorruptible.
All right, so that was a great chat with Jason Hall. It is so awesome to talk to Propagandy super fans who are as thoughtful as Jason. His conversation reminded me of conversations that we had with Todd, where the empathy in a human just runs so deep for the suffering of humanity that it's really hard to capture it into words. So I just want to say thanks to Jason directly. Thank you, Jason, for your rawness, your openness to be vulnerable here on the show with us, and for geeking out with me. It was truly a pleasure. So, Keith, let's dive into Life at Disconnect. What do you think?
Yeah, let's talk about the music first, Greg. I think I have to say how absolutely killer Potemkin is as a whole, especially just all the Todd songs. I mean, with back-to-back Todd songs on the A side and the B side. So there's Life at Disconnect. That follows Impending Halfhead. And I think the contrast between those two songs really conveys Todd's dynamic skills and his evolution as a songwriter and a performer.
Yeah, I'm glad we're doing this song now, because to me, if I think about the Todd songs on Potemkin, so there's 5 of them, and we've already done 2. We've done Cut Into the Earth and Bringer of Greater Things.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're doing Life at Disconnect. And if you think about the themes and the content and the message of Cut Into the Earth, Bringer of Greater Things, and Life at Disconnect, I feel like those are like a package. I feel like these 3 songs, that they fit very well together. Whereas Super Bowl Patriot and Impending Halfhead, those feel completely different to Bringer of Greater Things, Cut Into the Earth, and Life at Disconnect. So I feel like we're rounding out a Todd little mini trilogy on Potemkin right now. So before we go into Impending Halfhead and Super Bowl Patriot, I'm really glad that we're doing this one now, because it feels like it rounds out this little package within Potemkin City Limits that Todd brought to the table. So that's kind of how I'm feeling about the flow of our episodes for this one.
Yeah, that's a great observation, Greg. Well, I'll say with guitars, the first thing that stands out to me is the incredibly distinctive main guitar lick that leads into the vocals. It pops up again just a bit after those real quick proggy riffs that hint at what comes later with like the full-blown nerd metal that you find after Potemkin. And they're like very assertive power chord riffs with these off-kilter accents and additions. You think the lead guitar, that kind of main lead riff, is going to pop up again at times when it doesn't. And then the transitions on the song mirror what was said before about George's drum fills, how they have to be distinct every time. I mean, if you listen, they're really quick little tremolo hammer-ons and pull-offs that change so much. And it really gives the song a ton of depth. And it finally comes back. That main riff comes back to who are these humans? And I think is really unique with that part with the vocals. That riff sounds just so much more sorrowful than it did in the beginning when there wasn't any vocals.
You know, I'm really glad that you brought up transitions because that is something that I want to talk a lot about. So do you mind if I go into this transition thing that I'm thinking about? So
Yeah.
I am super pumped about the transitions in this song. And to me, the transitions are the real magical bits that I have been overlooking the whole past 15 years of listening to this song on this record. And I have this brand newfound appreciation for this song because of the transitions between parts. And so I'm going to go over the transitions found within the music of this song. I'm going to give the timings in the song, and I would encourage everybody listening to pause the episode. Whoa, not yet. Don't go yet. In just a second, after I go over it, you should pause the episode, listen to the song, watch the times on like your Spotify minute counter on the track or whatever you're doing when you listen, and then come back, because this is like so interesting to me. So the first 7 seconds, Keith, contain those totally wicked string bends on the guitar that reappear throughout the song. That's like the core of the song, is that opening riff, right? So then the vocals come in about 7 seconds in, and then there's that driving drum beat at about 3/4 time. Then at about 26 seconds, we see another transition at take a breath. And then from 26 to about 50 seconds, we see that section, just that ba-da-ba-da-bop, that really driving beat. And then at 50, we see the return of the wobbly string bends from the beginning of the song and the who are these humans, that lyric section that you just talked about.
Yeah.
So that's a short little section. And then at 105, the song turns from just this banging, driving song and transitions frequently and fast. Okay, so at 105, we see the first real slowdown and pullback into the, so this is paradise part. And then that lasts until 140. So from 104 to 140, it really is the Jord and Todd show. Jord really fills the space so well with those toms and ride cymbal until he quiets down and gives us some nice rolls on the hi-hat, and then those nice sharp, in-your-face sharp snare hits. And then Todd brings us back in at 140 with For the End, and then into that riff on the spectacle, some kind of catastrophe. Oh, man. And then at 155, we see a slightly more subtle transition into some wildness at the corruptible. And then the last minute, dude, is really super wild. So the last minute of this song is like back to back transitions. So at 220, Todd says, "You're the farthest fucking gone." And then it's quiet for 9 seconds until those snare hits bring us back into that driving riff. And then the slow riff comes back at 238 with some super quick vibrato on the guitar. And then we have that driving riff come back in like 5 seconds later, 244. And then at 254, we have that outro with some hammer taps and hammer pull-off combos as we go hard until the end. And then we hit one light measure in the outro. So there's like 9 super clear transitions within this one song that weave it all together. So now that I went over it, I want everybody to pause, go listen to it. Okay, go now. Okay, everybody's back now. Yeah? Okay, good. So that's kind of my thoughts on the transitions, and it really gave me a very deep appreciation for what was happening in the song. Does that all make sense?
That's so funny, Greg, because that was the word that really stood out to me this past week as I was thinking about the song, is really how many different parts there are. And again, how they're pieced together. I think that was a great description because there are so many different moving parts in Life at Disconnect.
Yeah, and I was listening to the song, like I listened to it like 20 times a day, and that last minute kept going from quiet to loud to quiet to loud, quiet to loud.
Right.
And I was like, what is happening? Why have I never thought
Yeah.
more deeply about this ricocheting
I know
transition?
exactly what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was just so ricocheting, and it was completely new to me that I was a huge epiphany. I hadn't thought of it before. But there's something else about the vocal performance of this song that also made me stop and think. You ready for this?
What do you got?
So you know how on Today's Empires, there's a bunch of songs where Todd and Chris go back and forth on vocals?
Mm-hmm.
Before, I had kind of thought that was a unique Today's Empires, Tomorrow's Ashes thing.
Yeah.
This song is kind of like that. On the surface, this is a Todd track, but Chris is all over this song singing. I love the back and forth vocal duet songs that are interspersed on Empires, and this one almost hits on that too. I was surprised at how I'd always just classified this as like a straight Todd song, but Chris has quite a few standalone lines and sings under Todd frequently.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost a continuation of the back and forth dynamic of Empires, and that surprised me a heck of a lot today.
Yeah, I know what you mean there too, because I definitely think of that shared vocal duty way more on Today's Empires. And again, listening this week, I'm not sure if I really recognized or noticed or thought about how it's really blended here.
Did you watch any live videos of the band playing this one?
I saw a couple.
I was watching Todd sing this song on a couple of those videos. It is intense watching him sing this song. Like it's almost like he loses control of his ability to play the bass because like he just wants to grab the microphone and just scream his head off. And man, he goes hard on these vocals when he's singing this one live. There's nothing else in the world that is happening to him except for just screaming these lyrics. And I feel it, when I watch it. I watched a video of them playing this in 2007, probably right after Beeve joined the band. And I was like nervous watching Todd sing it because I wanted to be like, dude, calm down, dial it back a little, save your voice. You are on tour, my friend.
Yeah.
Because the dude goes hard. And it reminds me of our chat with him when he was here for Dark Matters, when he was saying how badly, when he was in I Spy, he's like, I just wanted to rock out. And how JP in our Negredo episode was talking about Todd's intensity when he's performing and when he's recording. I was watching the videos of Propaganda playing Life at Disconnect, and the videos that are available, like the camera's like right on Todd. He's like right in the frame. And you can like see every vein like bulging out of his head and neck. I was like, holy moly, this is how Todd eventually lost his voice, sort of gave out around the supporting cast era, because he gives it all. And that is mad respect from me. I know that's a corny thing to say, but holy smokes, he leaves it all on the field on this song in particular.
Greg, I'm going to jump back to some other ideas with the guitars as well.
Yes, please do. I'm so sorry.
No. I love the description and the importance of the transitions. It's almost like the fourth member of this song. I think that part, so this is Paradise, that break there is really simple up front. And I also love how bare it is, like the willingness and the courage to let things be on display. That's Todd's voice, the really minimal picked chords. The guitar takes a back seat for that very first part.
Yes.
But even with that said, I think what that evolves into, that chord progression, is really unique and honestly beautiful. And then what you said with Todd coming back into the vocals with "for the end," that groove. And groove isn't a word I typically think of when I talk about Propaganda, but that part has just so much groove. And I think this part here is probably my favorite element of this song musically. So the riffs, again, are dialed back. It has those accents and bends that allow Chris to add to the tone, add to what Todd has crafted in the lyrics. And there's that one riff that's like, do 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 do.
Oh yeah.
And I just love that riff. And then it gets faster and a little riffy, a little proggy again. So that riff is in sync with the lyrics. In case you wonder, do 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 do. but that riff actually starts before the vocals pick up. And I never really noticed like how that guitar leads back into the vocals, and then it goes straight back into the chords that opened up the song. And I also really think the drums here are really iconic, especially those first 17 seconds where the snare accents some of what Todd's singing, his syllables. There are quick fills later, then into like slower, drawn out fills that transition away from that progressive intro to more of a punk beat where the cymbals take over. I gotta say, the cymbals are remarkable.
Yeah.
It's never like just a crash at the end of the bar. It's like Jord is somehow simultaneously backing up the rest of the band while at the same time taking the lead and making the song his own. And I think especially during that quiet break.
Yeah, dude. And you know what George seems to do? You know, like whenever drummers like build up on a cymbal, like shh.
Yeah,
and they like they start really quiet and then it just builds. I feel like George does that in the middle of songs. During there's a beat and he like builds up a cymbal, and I'm just like, wow, that is so crazy, especially in the slow parts of this song where it's Jord, like I was talking about earlier, the Jordan Todd show, I called it. But I just love those parts on this song as well. You know, I'm curious though, you mentioned groove and you said that's not a term you use often for Propaganda. Are there bands that you like that you would say that band has groove?
Oh, geez. I mean, everyone in the 90s talked about like Faith No More and Pantera, but I think there are certain death metal bands that work groove into it, whether that's Bolt Thrower, where it's pretty simple. The riffs really repeat. Like on Those Once Loyal, they can play 2 riffs in a 4.5 minute long song. And the whole time it's super interesting and you're headbanging along the whole time just because it has really good groove.
Well, and that's just that. Now it's just a totally side question because I was thinking like, oh, groove, interesting. I wonder what you would normally associate with groove if you don't associate Propaganda with groove.
Somewhat popular stuff in the 90s, like even Sepultura comes to mind.
Oh, for sure.
Where I really think like that percussion and the rhythm tend to take over versus just nonstop riffage where it's like a million notes a second.
Nice. So for Life at Disconnect, are there any other things for like bass or vocals that are really kind of jumping out at you?
Well, I'll say about that groove part that I mentioned, that really comes from Jord there. Kick drum that is so constant and a little bit faster than he tends to play, at least with the music so open there. And I really like in the drums where he's playing, leading it away from that groovy part, and the guitars stay the same, but then he completely transitions and he picks up the tempo, making that part sound really different, even though the guitars were exactly the same. They didn't even change. And I think Todd spends a lot of his time a little bit lower on the neck and on the lower strings. I don't think you really hear a lot of those higher bass runs that you might hear on Failed States or on Victory Lap. And I think it adds weight to the song as he goes back and forth between, reinforcing Jord and what Chris is doing. When he sings When Did That Matter Before, I could be wrong, but it sounds like he starts to work up higher on the strings, on the higher strings, and it gives it a little bit more lightness and I think a little bit of hope. And I love that part. It seems mostly pretty heavy and lower throughout most of the song, but it works up a little higher right at the very end.
I'm wondering if we asked Todd, say I said to him, Todd, how much better do you think you got at bass between Potemkin City Limits and Supporting Cast? I know we've talked about this before, that he was a guitar player first and foremost for years and years, and I wonder what he feels his biggest years of growth were as a bassist.
Yeah.
Because I feel like whenever Todd gets around to Failed States, I mean, that record is bass crazy. He's got some amazing bass on Failed States. And I'm wondering where he would feel his biggest sweet spot of improvement as a player actually occurred. And, another thing I was thinking about is Giant Sons came up in that interview that I read earlier with Chris in the opening section of this episode. And I was like, oh man, I really wish Beeve was in the band for Potemkin. This is a song where I feel like Beeve would throw in those like guitar howls and screams and all kinds of awesome stuff that he would do, like bring in so much atmosphere to it. And I know that Chris has said so many times, he's like, I wish Beeve would have been in the band sooner. We should have asked him sooner. So I think about all the things that could be, about how amazing these songs are on this record. But I love Chris's backing vocals on this record too.
Mm-hmm.
I keep thinking about how good Chris sounds backing up Todd on this, and he's like different than normal, isn't he?
I agree. I think he sounds a bit more somber. And I really love the idea of him singing lyrics that Todd wrote.
Yeah. Like the performance that he did for that Mosh Cam video of him singing Bringer of Greater Things is really cool. This one, Life at Disconnect, they go back and forth so nicely. And you know that Chris isn't overdoing it. He's like, in case you wonder. And then Todd's like, I'm not trying to be cynical. I know how you feel.
Mm-hmm.
So Chris is really croony on this song. It's really, really dialed back from his normal style, I think.
Overall, Greg, I think this is a really interesting track musically. From the unorthodox rhythms Jord develops to that really distinctive lead guitar. Because of all of those things, it's not surprising that there aren't any covers of it on YouTube. Again, there are kind of so many moving parts to this track.
For sure. And I couldn't find any playthrough videos as well, so I couldn't even really watch anybody playing it. So a challenge to all you guitar players out there, if you do a playthrough video of Life at Disconnect, make sure that you send it to us or tag us, because I would love to see some awesome playthroughs of this, especially if you can get some two-camera action going where you're playing over yourself with both guitar parts that are and I know Sheet Happens has the music published, so you can find it if you want to find it professionally done by Tim and Luke from Protest the Hero, who did it for Sheet Happens. Huge music discussion for this episode. Apparently we're diving deep on the performance of aspect of this one. So why don't we go into the lyrics? What do you think?
Yeah, Greg, I'm going to start with the first lines here. It says, had they been the ones dying under the cooking sun, picking through the dust, scratching at the barren earth, had it been their inside spilling into the sand, they'd see on cracking land their spirit cannot triumph. These lyrics create such a lucid mental image of a barren landscape, but not a desert or some other naturally arid ecosystem, but a place that has been transformed through human actions and inaction. And I think this could be a quote from a documentary on, say, like the Dust Bowl, some scathing commentary on the federal government's refusal to take action. I mean, there was one government report from the 30s that said, unless something is done, the Western Plains will be as arid as the Arabian desert. But now we're facing the desertification of like huge swaths of entire continents where literally billions of people live.
Yeah.
So this line from Fuck the Border comes to mind. You know, it's our culture and consumption that makes her life unbearable. And I was thinking, there was this poll from 2019 that went viral showing that Germans believe Donald Trump to be the greatest threat to world peace, surpassing Kim Jong-un and Vladimir Putin. But if you go back even further, I mean, 2014, there's a Wynn Gallup survey where 24 of the 68 nations polled ranked the U.S. as the greatest threat to world peace. There's informal wars in the Middle East, Northern Africa, and Central Asia, mass surveillance, drone strikes, and you could add to that, since then, science denial, cozying up to dictators, government-sanctioned assassinations, and the refusal to concede an election. Things haven't gotten better, but specifically what I think about is America's inability and or refusal to address and combat climate change. So the Trump administration withdrew from the Paris Climate Accords, inspiring other countries to also loosen their emission regulations. It called for federal lands to be open for oil and gas extraction, delayed regulations on methane leaks from landfills, and proposed to roll back federal regulations curbing the use of HFCs in the U.S. And he also repealed and replaced the Obama-era Clean Power Plan, which aimed to push states to reduce emissions from coal-fired power plants. And of course, he appointed the CEO of Exxon to the head of the State Department, and two different people who reject climate change to lead the EPA, numerous other appointees in the pockets of oil and gas who dismantled nearly 100 rules and regulations on pollution in the air, water, and the atmosphere. And I say this not to exonerate Democrats' scant environmental policies, but to point out that the incoming administration, they can reinstitute regulations that can restore air and water quality over time here in the U.S., but it can't undo the global impact our nation's feckless approach to climate change has ultimately created. So I saw an article from the New York Times that states that scientists have warned that if greenhouse gases in the atmosphere passed 400 parts per million, staving off warming of 2 degrees Celsius would become far more difficult. And we hit 400 parts per million in 2016. So together, these rollbacks are expected to result in additional 1.8 billion metric tons of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere by 2035, which is more than Germany, Britain, and Canada combined. In 2015, global warming reached 1 degree Celsius above pre-industrial measurements, so the warmest in more than 11,000 years. So even if the Paris Climate Accord's goal of keeping the rising temperatures at 1.5 degrees, that still means extreme temperatures in places with mass concentrations of people, the Mediterranean, Northern Africa, the Near East, as well as Western and Central Asia. And it could threaten water security for half of the people on Earth. And at 2 degrees Celsius warming, the deadliest heat waves that India and Pakistan experienced in 2015, which killed thousands of people, could occur annually. So I say this all because we are making the lives of untold numbers of people unlivable. And then we vilify entire populations when they try to escape unlivable environments. And this is only going to get worse. So if you want a short version, just listen to the song We Fail by the Swedish crust D-Beat band Victims, which includes audio samples from Brigadier General Stephen Cheney, who refers to climate change as a threat multiplier. He says, "You think you have a refugee problem now, just wait 30 years. That the Sahel region of Africa might see temperatures as high as 50 degrees or 122 degrees Fahrenheit in just 2 decades." And he provides examples of how climate change accelerated conflicts related to the Arab Spring, Boko Haram, Syria, and Bangladesh.
Oh my God. Oh, I'm just going to let that sit for a second. Holy moly. Yeah, the opening imagery of this song is tremendously disturbing. And I was thinking about many of those same things. And I was thinking about in 2015, the writer Naomi Klein, who is famous for the shock doctrine, no logo, and put out a new book called This Changes Everything about climate change. And in her 2015 book, Klein calls 2017 year zero for unalterable, irreversible climate change problems. Unless we started doing XYZ at the year 2017, we had virtually no chance. And well, we all know from all those things that you just said that we have bypassed year zero now by 4 years. So we are very behind the curve already. These problems are going to hit all over the world, and we are really careening towards an unsustainable future while people continue to get obscenely wealthy off of all those horrendously destructive practices that you just talked about. A very small amount of privileged, insanely, obscenely wealthy people are, banking fortunes off of the backs of all those terrible things that are making our world a far worse place. So, for example, the way of life in the United States could potentially transform a lot between the years 2040 and 2060. When you and I will be between the ages of 57 and 77, right? So this is not some kind of abstract thing that might happen 75 or 100 years after you and I are dead. We will very likely see some horrendous changes in our own country that has downplayed this for so long. And we reward the denialists with re-election year after year. Like, we are rewarding this behavior on the world stage by putting these same people back in office. Lindsey Graham just won re-election. You know what I mean? Marco Rubio is in the Senate, like Rick Perry. You didn't mention him from the Department of Energy, but we have some extreme estimates that I found that are published in ProPublica that show that many parts of Arizona will be 95 degrees or hotter for 6 months a year, including Maricopa County, notorious for Sheriff Joe Arpaio and all of his horrendousness. So while other parts of the world will clearly pay the price for climate change impact, which will cause mass migrations, the likes of which we have not seen, as you mentioned, at least not in this lifetime, the U.S. is going to suffer as well. Right? So all of our denial is only going to make our own place that we live worse within our lifetime. Between 2008 and 2018, I was finding some things around the world, but between 2008 and 2018, an average of 24 million people per year were displaced due to climate crises around the world, and the world barely paid attention to the 24 million people per year that were displaced due to climate. By 2050, the World Bank is projecting that within sub-Saharan Africa, Latin America, and South Asia, there will be around 143 million climate refugees. In West Africa, Lake Chad has almost entirely disappeared, and 4 million people had to move into camps. More than 2,000 Puerto Rican families are still looking for permanent settlement after Hurricane Maria went across Puerto Rico like a buzzsaw. Professors at Columbia University found that if global temperatures continue their upward march, applications for asylum to the European Union will increase by 28% to nearly 450,000 per year in this century.
Yeah.
And geez, like, dude, even here in Buffalo, New York, where people didn't even have air conditioning 10 years ago, everybody's getting AC now. Central air is going in Buffalo left and right. Like, when I moved into my house in 2018, we moved in on July 3rd, 2018, and it was 93 degrees outside, and we did not have air conditioning in our house. And we did not know that we had bought a house without air conditioning, right? Because we assumed that there was air conditioning because we moved here from Missouri, which is hot as freaking hell. But we moved into this house, and I went over to the thermostat, and I was punching the thermostat, and my real estate agent, who was there for me with the closing, was like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "I'm turning on the air conditioning." She goes, "Open the windows." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" I was turning the air on. She goes like, "There's no air in this house."
Oh,
I was like, brutal. And so people all over Buffalo are getting central air installed right now in homes that have never had it, because it is regularly above 80, 85 degrees all summer long now. And everybody that I talked to who has lived here their whole lives, they're like, it was never like this. And so even places in the north, like Buffalo, which have historically not had air conditioning, people are now getting it left and right. And when you run AC all the time, what are you doing? You're creating more emissions, right? So even the places that are further north that used to escape things like central air are now needing it so people can actually sleep at night. So that's interesting, man. So all those things that you're seeing, like, we're already starting to see the effects of that.
And Greg, I'm really interested to hear how you interpret the next part, because I think this is the lyric that I struggled the most with in interpreting. So where it says, "Take a breath, sit back and relax, enjoy your moment of peace. You'll soon be back in the middle. Prepare for this one to make you flinch in disbelief." So my thoughts, I think had they been the ones dying as those with political and corporate power who have destabilized entire regions. But I see you in this part where it says, like, "You'll soon be back in the middle," as Todd singing to the fans, to the people who only have to experience these things through music, just like how Chris in the past has specifically addressed the audience in a numerous songs. I think Todd is trying to remind the audiences here not to leave these issues when the song ends. What are your thoughts on that part?
Yeah, it's hard to say. It's kind of an open to interpretation line, but I do think that when he says sit back and relax, enjoy your moment of peace, it's like when you binge on news for months and months and months at a time, and you eventually hit your saturation point, and you're like, I cannot hear another story that is horrendously tragic and then you just withdraw. Right now, I feel very withdrawn from news. I go through spurts where I binge on news, but right now I was kind of like, I got to the point during all this coup stuff, during all this, like, out in the open, try to, destroy democracy thing, where I just sort of hit my breaking point. I wrote a letter to my representatives and I was like, you need to get to work. You have front row seats to the downfall of a nation if this happens while you have power. So right now, like the sit back and relax thing, it's like when terrible things are swirling around you and you just cannot take it anymore. That's kind of how I see it. There's another line that you said was like, had it been their inside spilling into the sand, they seed on cracking land, their spirit cannot triumph. Like, that is a scary line to me. And it kind of reminds me of what we were talking about in the Cut into the Earth episode as well, when I was talking about picturing the front of a building blown off by a car bomb, seeing houses in your mind, like that were like in Syria and Yemen and Gaza, that are like dollhouse cutaways with like the front of the building blown off and like the former inhabitants who had to like run for their lives essentially. So whenever we talk about the burnt land, I also picture like the farming families who are being driven off like ancestral lands because of the desertification and the aridness that is creeping across formerly agricultural regions in our world. But prepare this one to make you flinch in disbelief when you catch a glimpse of those just following the past that got us to where we are. This line makes me think about all these people who are in charge of our country. I constantly am finding myself flinching in disbelief at what I'm seeing. Today, I found myself looking at a picture of freaking Marco Rubio getting a COVID vaccine. I was so completely taken aback that this was happening. I almost wanted to punch out my computer screen from pure fury seeing this picture. Marco Rubio getting a COVID vaccine. The dude who puts biblical verse on his Twitter every single day while coming to the defense of like the horrendousness of this president endlessly for the past several years. And like, I understand that people are furious that Nancy Pelosi got a COVID vaccine too, but Marco Rubio is 49. And I'm just like, all the doctors and nurses and paramedics and, hospital administrators and teachers and school nurses, like all these people in our country who are waiting for COVID vaccines. And I'm flinching in disbelief watching freaking Marco Rubio get his COVID vaccine. And I'm just like, I can't even believe I'm seeing this right now. So I've found myself flinching a lot for the past like several years.
So Greg, that line that you read, following the past that got us to where we are.
Yeah.
I think Todd is singing to the people and nations of affluence, of comfort, and of power, whether that's the US, Canada, or elsewhere.
Yeah.
It's sort of like the mirror to Cut into the Earth, where I hear Todd singing to the people making the perilous journey to improve their lives and the lives of their loved ones. He says, just follow the path that they cut into the earth right back to their door.
Yes.
So it's like, it's talking to the people in those, in those wealthy, powerful nations who, who have carved the path.
Oh my God, you're so right.
And are now rejecting those people and telling them to stay out.
Oh, you are so right. I love that interpretation. Like, that's what I said earlier. Like, I feel like this Cut into the Earth and Bringer of Greater Things are like a package deal, especially Cut into the Earth and this. Maybe I'm wrong about Bringer of Greater Things. Maybe it's just Cut into the Earth and Life at Disconnect. Maybe that's like the combo of pointing the mirror in both directions of the people cutting into the earth to get to a safe place and the people who are the gatekeepers on the other end who are like, no, not you, anybody but you, and keeping that door shut, even though they're the ones that created all the horribleness in the first place that got the other people's lives ruined entirely. Oh boy.
So who are these human shadows with still beating hearts scratching at the door to our paradise? Why do corpses litter the road? Who are these humans? And these lines are so powerful because we have denied any identity to the people seeking safety and asylum. I mean, they're not human beings. They're illegals, aliens, foreigners, or a caravan. Right now, hundreds of people are trekking from Honduras to the U.S. following the devastations of 2 different hurricanes after losing everything but a few items that could be salvaged and carried in backpacks. And the Trump administration is pushing through last-minute immigration restrictions that cut off asylum access for most migrants arriving at the U.S.-Mexico border due to changing eligibility criteria.
Gross. It just makes me sick. And then we have the line that says, "So this is paradise.
Mm-hmm.
Beyond the distant hands of the world, here we all think we don't belong, but still bow our heads to our emperors." Love that. Like, this reminds me of the lyrics in Dear Coach's Corner about how only a madman could think certain future trajectories are a paradise.
Mm-hmm.
And then in Victory Lap, where they talk about the wall that could not be scaled would make them great.
Yeah.
I love seeing the thread of propagandists thinking across records as they watch events that they've observed in previous records continue on the path, that story, and how they tie those things together. And this line, "So this is paradise," reminds me as well of how so many of us are so idealistic, so profoundly wishing that we could do more to make the world a better place, all while our rents skyrocket, careers with benefits are gutted, the best healthcare access is relegated to those with the highest salaries, and they're in like the most elite corporate sectors, and how it's not about people at all, and how the who are these humans? They're walking here trying to just have safety, and the whole time people with nothing are traveling. Their images are plastered across frickin' Fox News and OAN like the illegal immigration porn that they're being presented as. And it's not about humanity at all. It's about entertainment and being entertained at other people's expense. And I am tired of it.
Right. And I see Todd in this part that you read addressing the audience again, questioning if this is the best that Western nations can do, with all its self-aggrandizing, the promise of progress, the assertion that we hold some torch to light a better way for the rest of the world, while ignoring our own moral and philosophical blind spots, especially within radical music specifically, where punks and metalheads cast themselves as misfits, like we discussed on Mate Ka, mumble your abuse, while ignoring the real outcasts and misfits of the world. So I hear Todd asking, what's the point of this counterculture that the mainstream labels as vacuous and vain if we're not actually using it to make something better than what's being protested, to extend a hand to people hurt most by the things that punks sing about: tyrannical governments and industrial capitalism, militarism, criminals, both corporate and underground, and, as I described earlier, climate change and environmental catastrophe.
Is this all there is? Maybe we really have nothing to say. Maybe we truly are just shallow and lame and waiting for the end. And dude, he ain't wrong. I mean, what am I doing? What am I doing? And I've been thinking about this a lot. And that is such an anguished line, because you mentioned all the misfits and the punks in society being like, yeah, let's band together and blah, blah, blah. It's a hard thing to be shown unfortunate truths about oneself. It's not easy to hear negative things about oneself. Like when somebody reveals that they don't like you, it's not an easy thing to hear. When people are saying to you, you're not doing anything to make this world a better place, it's not an easy thing to hear, because we all want to believe the best about ourselves. Nobody wants to feel, attacked, and no one wants to feel like they're not doing a good job. But man, this line, is this all there is? Maybe we really have nothing to say. It's real, man. And it's an anguish line. It reminds me of that line in the funeral procession from Supporting Cast, where it says, I try to keep my composure amidst the insanity, resigned to the truth that I will not live to see the dawn of a better day.
Yeah.
Oh man, these lines from Life a Disconnect, from Funeral Procession, they hurt. I feel so numb and emotionless on so many days this year that I wonder if I'm going to only feel emptier than I do right now. Like as I get older, am I just going to feel emptier? Am I going to be capable of achieving even less than I am right now? Like I saw a photo journalist post a photo essay recently, and I'm forgetting the name of the journalist. I really hope I can find a link to it. The journalist realized, wow, I'm lonely. He decided to go out and photograph loneliness. And the photos that he took of people sitting alone, of old women sitting surrounded by their collections of stuffed animals, it just showed me how many people out there are just waiting for the end, like for real. I feel so fortunate that I have like creative endeavors that keep me going day after day. But damn, if there isn't a ton of pain out there, even amongst people who have warm places to live and enough to eat. And I feel like this line is true to a painfully awkward degree in far too many ways in my own life. So I'm like pointing the mirror square at myself on this one.
And I think the next part, the spectacle or some kind of catastrophe to bring us back to the earth, to stun our ever nodding heads, to introduce us once again to the one incorruptible as she flushes us from her veins, kills us to live again. And I see Todd here wondering if there will be anything that wakes us up from our mass fugue state of indifference and ignorance. If that's nodding along at shows mindlessly to the music, ignoring the words, or nodding along to those with power, entertained at home, what actually has to happen to remind us that the earth is in charge and will wipe us out if need be? Just think of this. 99.9% of all species that ever lived on earth are extinct. So if I were a betting man, I wouldn't be holding out that we're actually going to right this ship before some sort of global collapse. So Daniel Simberloff, a professor of environmental studies and director of the Institute for Biological Innovations at the University of Tennessee, writes, of about 6 to 10 million currently existing species, we have still only identified 1 million. We know more about vertebrate species than we know about plants and insects. But for groups that we know well, knowledge of very recent species extinctions and for current species, their ranges and the threats to them allows us to be certain that extinction rates are comparable to those of great past extinctions. And in her book, The Sixth Extinction, Elizabeth
I love that book.
She writes, human activity has transformed between a third and a half of the land surface of the planet. Most of the world's major rivers have been dammed or diverted. Fertilizer plants produce more nitrogen than is fixed naturally by all terrestrial ecosystems. Fisheries removed more than a third of the primary production of the ocean's coastal waters. Humans use more than 1/2 of the world's readily accessible freshwater runoff, and people have altered the composition of the atmosphere due to a combination of fossil fuel, combustion, and deforestation. The concentration of carbon dioxide in the air has risen by 40% over the last 2 centuries, while the concentration of methane, an even more potent greenhouse gas, has more than doubled. So it'll be too late when we collectively understand that the planet actually is holding all of the cards. It's kind of like Gozer the Gozerian from Ghostbusters. The destructor can come in pretty much any form, whether that's ocean acidification, desertification, soil erosion, nutrient depletion, forest fires, extreme weather, water shortages, or mutually assured nuclear annihilation.
Yeah, or Shiva within Hinduism, the destroyer. Love it. You know, this reminds me of that line, some kind of catastrophe to bring us back to earth, to stun our ever nodding heads. I love that. And it reminds me of the imagery as well of earth healing itself, flushing her veins during the first lockdowns of COVID spring.
Yeah.
Well, looking at those emissions maps that NASA was putting out, and watching those those clouds of pollutants around the world thinning like almost in real time across the world, you know, air quality became clearer, bodies of water were covering. Human beings who are like very much like a plague upon this planet in many ways were locked down. The Earth had a chance to sort of flush the veins a little bit. NASA researchers have found that since February, pandemic restrictions have reduced global nitrogen dioxide concentrations by about 20%. And I know I've mentioned it on the show before, but man, if anybody out there listening has never seen the film Koyaanisqatsi, which means world out of balance or life of corruption and turmoil, it's such a fascinating examination of what we've been doing to our planet for generations, and killing us to live again seems pretty appealing if one is considering the point of view of the planet as like the protagonist in a story. If this was a written story, the innocent planet with all of its beauty and unbelievable diversity and fantastic resources, the planet would very much be the protagonist, and humans would very much be the antagonist. Like, there's no way really in my mind that I can spin that as being the other way around. You know, we see like, oh, the hurricanes are going to come and they're going to wipe us out, and the floods are going to wipe us out. But I'm like, don't we kind of deserve it? It's just like been really on my mind a lot. And watching this year, some of the ways that the planet has been able to heal, it reminds me of a book called The World Without Us. And I can't remember the author of the book, but The World Without Us is such an amazing book, because the premise of the book is, if all human beings on Earth disappeared literally instantly today, even if all of our stuff was left behind, so all of our homes, the highways, the factories, the airports, everything stays, but humans just completely disappear. The World Without Us is a book about how long it would take for planet Earth to filter all of our stuff and return to being in control of itself without us like wrecking everything. So if anybody out there is looking for a great book over the holidays or whatever, if you have some downtime to read, The World Without Us is an amazing book about the world flushing us from our veins.
And that reminds me of something that happened after 9/11 with drops in shipping and plane traffic, that whales were recorded far more.
Cool.
Because they were happier, because there was so much less noise from massive ships and tankers.
Awesome.
That whales were like stoked that there were fewer ships. And think of that, like those things that we don't even recognize our impact until it comes to a stop. And so the next line, in case you wonder, I'm not trying to be cynical. I know how you feel. If your life's at disconnect, in case you wonder what the fuck's wrong with me, if it all makes sense, you're the furthest fucking gone. And I love this line, because I have to remind people that I don't bring up these things like ecological collapse, the things that keep me awake at night, the focus on, you know, the Dow Jones and the S&P that benefit such a minute group of people at the cost of the well-being of pretty much every other living organism on Earth. I don't bring that up just to be negative. And I too have reservations about anyone who looks around and thinks, you know what, this is normal. This is how things should be. This is what's best for the most people. And I have a real hard time with those who tell me just try to be positive. Or why do you have to be so negative if I bring up kind of anything that you and I ever talk about on the show, Greg? And I think, how are you not scared? Or how do you not feel for other people? And the fact that we're teetering on the precipice while sharing cat memes, Groupons, and Pinterest recipes, it just seems like our priorities aren't in the right place. And I think that many people I know are the furthest fucking gone. I mean, just think about how many people reacted to minor inconveniences and minimal disruptions to their daily routine of luxury from COVID. I mean, if these people are protesting during a pandemic because they can't go out to Applebee's, what's going to happen when water is $20 a gallon? And wildfires aren't just relegated to the western part of the U.S.
People think this is bad now. Just
exactly.
Wait. This is nothing compared to what is going to happen.
Right.
This is our dress rehearsal right now. and we have failed
Mhm.
completely. We are failing the test, which is the dress rehearsal for the real test.
Mhm.
And, you know, I got to give some props here for a second. I can see that much of society is far better than in the past, for a lot of, you know, demographics in the world for human beings. But I also have to talk about the incredible scientific community that just made a vaccine in 9 months, which is between 90 and 95% efficacious, which is an unbelievable feat. Were so much of the news today not absurdly ricocheting and disorienting and horrendous in nature? Can you imagine how much we could actually be ecstatic and celebrating the unbelievable accomplishment of our amazing scientists in this world? I am unbelievably disappointed that we live in a country right now. We can't even agree if an election result happened. Although, meanwhile, people who are actually trying to make civilization a better place, scientists and laboratories, actually freaking did it. And we're not even giving them the credit that they are due because we're arguing about a freaking election result. It makes me sick. It's arguably the greatest scientific achievement the world has seen in a generation, and it's mired down in the news, created by a madman. The attempts to overturn a national election, unreal conspiracy theories, a populace who argues day and night on social media about who are sheeple and who aren't sheeple. Like, we're missing this incredible moment, especially in the US, because of how we basically seem to hate each other. But I will rip on anyone who isn't trying to make the world a better place and anyone who isn't trying to actively improve the lives of Americans. And when I saw freaking Marco Rubio get that vaccine while he whines and moans on Twitter about who called somebody a fucker, I'm like, dude, what have you ever done for anyone? I mean, what do they do? Like,
Right.
avoid government shutdowns? We're going to shut down like tomorrow night. They just passed a 1-day continuing resolution. 1 day. We're going to fund the government for 1 day. Look at these jerks. I don't see any progress coming on large-scale movement other than stifling roadblocks, social media, and talk show posturing and blaming. Like, I'm sick of it, man. So this is like my outlet, this show, where we get to come on here and talk about this stuff, because I feel like this is one of the only places where I feel like it's okay for me to do this in a productive way and get these things off my chest and talk about it. Makes me feel better, even though it's all horrible.
So, Greg, related to that, I think that takes us directly into the next line. So they've got badges
Oh, dude, this
that
line.
they cover with their hands while they're bashing your fucking head.
Dude, I got some
They've
stuff
got
on this one.
graveyards that they'll fill with that head if you start getting anywhere. And at first, I kind of thought these ideas perhaps being disjointed or disconnected. But thinking now about what you just said, you know, if we speak up and speak out, if we organize and confront this madness and rally against social inequity or government policies and certain doom, we're beaten back into submission and servility by those who are assigned to protect us in the first place. But here's the thing, they don't even have to cover their badges anymore. And it doesn't even matter if they murder someone with their body cameras turned off, because we have plenty of examples of civilians being executed with no due process and ultimately no accountability with the body cameras on or with video. Whether that was Philando Castile, Eric Garner, Laquan McDonald, Jacob Blake, Elton Sterling, Eric Harris, Elijah McClain, or Daniel Shaver.
And I can't help but think a lot about this past summer that we just witnessed in the United States and the notion of police accountability for deaths and other violent offenses. Now, to be crystal clear, I have no idea what the life of a police officer is like, because I am not one, nor do I care to be one. That is not my vision for how I want to live my life. But I sure as hell know that there are ways of keeping order in a nation that don't involve sporadically murdering the citizens of a country, often for insanely minor things with zero due process. So this summer, everyone will remember the murder of George Floyd and the subsequent protests. When Sue Lin was on the show, when we talked about their experience with marches in New York and the scariness of that and what Sue Lin witnessed. It began being reported that cops at those protests were covering their badges with black strips, removing the teeny tiny bit of accountability they might face in the event of wrongdoing. As was reported by The Intercept, the National Lawyers Guild this summer said covering badge numbers, quote, serves to prevent aggrieved individuals from being able to identify the perpetrators of police misconduct or relevant witnesses to same, and the failure of the NYPD to stop this practice provides a sense of impunity to members of the service that they can violate the demonstrators' rights without consequence, end quote. When cops at the protests were asked by journalists why they wore these black bands, they responded that they wear it when one of theirs has fallen, of which 20 plus cops in New York City died of COVID this summer. So I think that's what they were referring to. But when pressed about why it covered the badge number at the protest instead of just the middle of the badge, officers would say things like, oh, it must have fallen down. It fell down. Exactly. Right. Seattle police officers were ordered to display their numbers at protests. There were investigations in Chicago. It was acknowledged that it was happening here in Buffalo. Down the road from me in Rochester, New York, a man named Daniel Prude died of asphyxiation in police custody in Rochester. Police requirements to display badges and names were waived for, quote, officer safety during the massive protests that were in Rochester, New York. And to make matters even worse, Garrett Graff reported in the Washington Post about the olive-garbed, badgeless, uniformed secret police that showed up in D.C. this summer. Remember those guys? And then Graff wrote, quote, in the midst of generational unrest, it is not unreasonable to ask, are these officers the vanguard of a new U.S. secret police? Another step down the path toward authoritarianism. After all, what are secret police other than anonymous agents of the state charged with intimidating and silencing dissident citizens? The idea of unmarked, unbadged paramilitaries patrolling America's streets brings to mind the East German Stasi, or the gangs of hired thugs recruited by the Egyptian government to attack the Tahrir Square democracy protesters in 2011. And then Graff wrote elsewhere, he called them unaccountable and untraceable, which is the message that is being sent to people at protests when people with no badges, no numbers show up on the streets in full uniform. That is the message. We are unaccountable, we are untraceable, and we're coming for you. And that is eerie, man. You know, an example in San Diego showed men in military gear charging from unmarked vehicles at a group of Black Lives Matter protesters, wrestling a woman into the vehicle and driving off. And people were yelling, "Who are you? Who are you?" The unmarked officers screamed at them, "Follow us and you will get shot." You know, those officers would turn out to be members of the San Diego Police Department yelling, "Follow us and you'll get shot." And it is so terrifying to consider the paths these events take in certain situations. And I feel really, really uneasy about where we are. And if we think this is over because of an election result, come talk to me in 2024 when the United States elects someone even worse, but who is more competent. This is the tip of the iceberg. Like, I feel like it is only going to get worse. I hope I'm wrong. And I will fully admit, if that happens, if things do get better, I will say, hey, I've never been happier to be wrong in my life. But all this covered badge stuff, this badgeless stuff is horrific. And I could go on and on about that forever, I'm sure. But if people know of examples of this type of phenomena from now or throughout history of badgeless or unaccountable or untraceable or unidentifiable officers committing atrocities, definitely drop it in the comments on Twitter or Instagram or email. It's at propagandapod@gmail.com, because I would read more about that unidentifiable officers thing in a heartbeat. So send that my way if you know of examples from your town especially.
Well, Greg, I think Todd takes this song in a different direction from Chris's songs in this era, which felt far more bleak. Todd ends it, I won't pretend that we're on the winning end, but when did that matter before anyway?
Dude.
That never mattered before anyway. And
Power.
This is easily my favorite lyric, because despite all this, Todd refuses to be silent. He is unwilling to give up. He will not be beaten down. And that's why I love this band so damn much. People might read their lyrics or watch interviews and come away misinterpreting the band's message. The songs are not the end point in relation to the various issues that they tackle. The songs are the starting point to learn more, to do more, to speak up, to take action, not just for the listeners, but I firmly believe for the band members themselves.
I agree. You got any good YouTube comments?
I have a couple. I found great song. Potemkin was such an underrated album when it came out. And that's actually from David Feldman, one of our listeners. And he posted that yesterday, coincidentally.
Wonderful. One person wrote, I have this album in block caps, which I thought was a very funny comment
Yeah.
because I'm like, well, that's better than not having this album.
That sounds like an older YouTube comment from maybe like 10 or 12 years ago.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Any other good ones you found?
My favorite was Cheers to the Apocalypse.
You know, and Propagandy's comments section was disabled on this song.
I saw that.
So there wasn't a whole heck of a lot of comments on this song. But another person wrote, Propagandy has helped form my worldview, and I am very grateful for that. So, you know, I think there's a couple good ones, but this is an overlooked song completely by so many people. And I hope that all of our ranting and raving for the last 2.5 hours or however long this episode winds up being, you know, I hope that helps out. But what is your big lesson takeaway for this track?
Well, Greg, I think the final lines of this feel like Chris's proclamation that power still calls all the shots in a people's history. Maybe here Todd is saying the earth calls all the shots, and although things don't seem hopeful, there are people right now whose lives will be made better by our refusal to remain passive and complacent. And even if we can't ward off greater calamities in the future, Greg, I guess my takeaway from this song is how disconnected I am and at whose expense. So due to the pandemic and due to selfishness, I've definitely eased up in taking an active role in my community, and especially in volunteering, which right now is needed so much more. So it's a terrible contrast. But my wife and I have really hunkered down because, well, I guess we're fortunate enough to do so. And if I can't do those things in 2021, well, what can I do? And I really think a lot about your interview with Dr. Christopher Jensen and some things that he said about in Zoochosis for that episode, how he struggles to be active and involved in movements because he's so active and involved as a parent. Because by the time this episode comes out, my wife will have given birth to our very first child.
Hey!
And although I'm excited, I'm incredibly excited. I'm incredibly nervous. I'm scared. And I hope I can find a way to balance my time, efforts, and contributions for my child's present, for their future, but also for the present and the future for the people that I don't know.
Well, I know that our listeners out there who just heard that will be wishing you extremely good fortunes in the coming months as you navigate your new reality. Maybe we will use your new child as an excuse to take a week off now and then, which I hope doesn't disappoint everybody too much, because Keith is going to need a little bit of time here and there, and I fully intend to give it to him when he needs it to be there for his family. But also maybe we'll do a couple of shorter episodes that aren't 2.5 hours long. Maybe we'll utilize our time a little better. But I love that. And so I love that you referred back to that chat I had with Dr. Jensen, because that was such a good one.
Oh man, one of my favorite interviews.
Love it. And so if you're listening out there, Chris, hello, hope you're well. So for me, this song is pretty wide ranging. And I guess like my teachable moment is all the topics that we've discussed. Continue caring about climate change, continue caring about refugees, continue caring that the world wants to purge us, continue caring that cops are descending into an authoritarian madness that wants to wipe out people who are demonstrating their First Amendment rights. Continue caring about these things. Try to retain a shred of hope in the face of immense challenge. It's always been an uphill battle, and it always will be, just like Todd says in the end of the song. This reminds me to stay vigilant, motivated, to care about the strife and struggles of people all over the world, even as our leaders get seemingly more and more craven, which is super disappointing. And I guess I need to get myself some help next year as well. I'm thinking about maybe getting a little bit of therapy, when the world opens up a bit more. But this project is keeping me going right now. But oof, I need a little bit of help, I think. And I need to figure out how to serve my community a bit so I can begin to feel connected more to the lives of those around me. And in order to begin that process, I think maybe I'll get a little bit of help for myself, and then maybe I'll be able to effectively help people a little bit better around me.
Right on.
So this song makes me want to know people more, not less. And right now I'm sort of on a fast track to social isolation, and I can see it coming. So I feel like that's pretty good that I can acknowledge it, see it, and maybe take a few course correcting actions to divert the path of loneliness that maybe I was on. So those are a few of my lessons. Would you like to do the honor of rating the song first?
Greg, I'm going to give this a 3.5. I jam it in my headphones on a walk to work, on a car trip, but there are quite a few more songs penned by Todd that hit me just a little bit harder. But I will say, honestly, this track has made me think about things that I hadn't before, about the song in ways that I hadn't before. And I think that's all just a sign of really true talent.
Yep. I'm going to give it a 3.75. I like it a lot. I don't think that I would necessarily miss it if it weren't in a live set. Like, I think if I went to see a Propaganda show and I left at the end of the night, and I don't think if they didn't play it, I don't think I would notice. But I would also be pleasantly surprised if they did play it. I'm glad that I went deeper and counted all the little transitions and twists and turns in the musical performance of the song, because that little musical journey that I went on today, I was reading the sheet music and going through each measure and like tracking the transitions. So it was a musical deep dive today that helped me reappreciate and reassess my understanding of this song. And this is one of those songs by Propaganda that takes a bit more work to fall in love with it. You know what I mean? Like, you listen to a song like Die Jugendmarsch or Speculative Fiction off this record, and you're like, bam, I love that song. It's an instantaneous, easy listen, and you love it the first second you hear it. This is not a song like that to me. This is a great song, but this is not an easy song to love. So I'm encouraging people out there, if this has been a skipper for you at any time, rethink that, go back, give it like 50 jams in a row, and think about me and Keith ranting and raving at you for the last couple hours. And I think you'll really reappreciate it. But yeah, Keith, I know that you got those stickers in the mail that I sent you too, right? What'd you think of those?
I did. They're sweet.
Yeah. Thanks to everybody who picked up a couple of stickers from me. I'm not here for your money, people, but this show does cost me and Keith a little bit of cash money to keep running with the server costs and buying gear and paying Justin Santora for artwork and things like that. So my little sticker fundraiser helped me pay for the server for a couple months, and our episodes are so long that I have to pay for a massive megabyte plan on our podcast platform. So you all kept the lights on for the podcast for a few months. So thank you so much. That's our episode on Life at Disconnect. Thank you, Jason Hall, Western Addiction. You are amazing. And I hope that everybody out there, if you've never heard Western Addiction or you haven't listened to them in a bit, you'll go back and check them out. Their latest record is Frail Bray from Fat Records, and it is so good. And I think you'll love it. And Todd Kowalski also has a guest vocal spot on Tremulous. So go check that out. And if you want to reach out to us, you can find us at propagandipod@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter @propagandipod, and you can find us on Instagram @propagandipod. And I love hearing from you, so hit me up and we'll see you there. But we will be back with another episode soon. So talk to you then.